our side. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So today we are going to discuss about the topic of international relations, the concept of power, and also in this concept there are several different kinds of powers are there, but we have to know about the concept of power. Later we will discuss about the different types and what are the elements in this concept. We are going to discuss about that. Actually, we already known that the international relations are basically about the concept of power only, because every nation wants to get the one of the superpower in the world. That's what the reason the concept of this power has been arised at the time of the sovereign state system. At the time of 16th century, one of the thinker named Jean Bodin, in his words, he used this concept about power in the explanation of sovereignty. In this regard, he used this term power. So actually, in human relations, this concept is very important. Apart from that, in international relations also, broadly speaking about this concept, in the name of acquiring the power among the all other states. Many thinkers, even our one of the famous international theorist Hans J. Margantho, one of the father of our international relations studies, he defined that simply in his simple words, as power is a man's control over minds and actions of other man's, because everyone influence others, everyone interact with others, everyone can motivate others, everyone can impose his authority over another person in the name of authority, in the name of any kinds of relationship. Everyone can motivate others, everyone can impact others. So that's what the reason the Margantho explained like this. But here in international relations, the concept of power is explaining about the relationship between the states and to acquiring the uh, uh, sovereignty. So it is not always easy to define it. The concept of power is not so simple. Some of thinkers explain that the states are uh, ability in which may not be exercised its powers over all the states, but in the time of sovereign and modern state system, the colonial rulers who are already developed, they motivating, they influencing the depending states in the world at the time of modern state system. So after getting independence from the colonial rulers, every nation became a sovereign state. So that's what everyone got its own power, everyone got its own authority to get a important role in the international political manner. So if we observe, there are several ingredients in this concept. They are like force, influence, and authority. According to some thinkers like Columbus and Wolf, authority means voluntary compliance by actor. So one nation can influence other. One nation can force to other state, not equivalent state. They are in case of developing nation, a developed nation can force to developing nation. A developed nation can force to a poor state. Like that, there is a difference. Ingredients are there in the concept of power, so they can respect each other, but in the acquirance of this concept, in the name of power, everyone wants to force other states to get the superpower recognition in the international politics. There are several alliances are there to get the superpower. There are many treaties are there in the context of international politics. There are several things are there, but in the concept of power, it's rotating between the nations, rotating between the human nature also, because if the leader is free, if the leader wants to become a democratic state, there is no force on others. There is no interaction between the other states. So there are several issues are there. There are various kinds of elements are there in the concept of national power. First one is population can decide the concept of national power. If we observe in the world in present time, there are several countries are with large population, several countries are there with a less population. If we take a large population state, it's not only have strong armed forces but have manpower for various economic activities also, because everyone in the country, if they work, the economy of that country will go soon. Very in the name of development, it will become a one of the superpower in the world. If manpower will not do any work in the form of their employment or in the form of their country's development, the state will remain as undeveloped country. So if we take an example of China during 19th century, it has a less power because there are less people are working in the different fields, like in the production, in the technology basis, in the mode of any other related service sector. There are less population is working under the service category. So that's what if the more population work for the nation, they will grow up so easy. So like even in India also, there are many unemployed youth is not doing any work because there is no chances to get work. There are necessary is there, but the governments are not implementing the provide employment for the unemployed people. If they provide employment chances, everyone can get employment and they will do work for the development of nation. So in this concept of power, one of the major element is territory also is one of the major element, because if we observe in the world, there are different types of territorial nations are there, because some countries have a large territory, some countries have less territory. If you observe, some of having mountains, some of states having deserts, some of states having more water content in their territory. But geographically, there are many variations are there, but in the name of the getting this concept, everyone wants to get the superpower in the world. So normally it is believed that a country large in size would be more powerful than a smaller states. If we observe, because there would be large population will be there, there would be more natural resources will be there. So that's why if they utilize their natural resources in full fledged usage, they will become more developed as soon as possible. So if there are no natural resources in the country, if there are no use of natural resources, they cannot develop so early. So in other hand, some countries are there with its frozen waters, like Canada, in area of cold countries are there. But if they use, if we utilize, they cannot utilize that frozen water, because there is no use with that. If we observe, they cannot become a big power, because there is no resources are there. There is no use of that frozen water. So in this concept in international relations, the climate also influence its power of a nation, because frozen Antarctica or desert areas like Sahara or some sorts of Saudi Arabian United Arab Emirates, like Arabian countries are there. So they are not suitable for the power, because there is no usage of that territory. There is no proper resources are there. Some kinds of resources are there, like petroleum products, some other uranium, like that. Many precious things are there, but in the name of territory, in the name of their support of climate, there is no possibilities are there to become a powerful nation or to become a more superpower in the world. So if you observe, every desert in the world, even deserts are having some kinds of natural resources like petroleum products, or other uranium products, or some basic elements of in the production of nuclear power. They found that countries are very important in the nuclear process. So if we discuss about these countries, if they export that kind of products properly, they can develop so soon. But there is restrictions are there. There is many international treaties are there, because in the name of peacemaking, United Nations organizations never accepted to transfer any nuclear products or any nuclear technology, any sharing of information about nuclear technology. UNO never accepts about this thing. So if natural resources also constitute another element of power, but the natural resources like oil, uranium, various minerals add to the power of a state. Today, importance of oil-rich Gulf has increased. So majorly entire the world depending upon the Gulf countries oil. So if they stop to export oil to other states, everyone will get suffer from the usage of these petroleum products. So nations can improve their power in the name of utilization of natural resources. If on account of their natural resources, they can give rewards in the form of minerals, agriculture products, or manufactured goods. If we observe, one of the major thing is military forces also there for the express about the power of a nation. If we observe, the important element of the power is that one of the concept of this military forces. Military strength is good, the nation will protect by the others intervenes. So this relates to the conventional notion that power is backed by military force. If there are no such a powerful military forces, everyone get rid of that country. If we take an example of a poor country, is always not safe with other developed rich countries, because if they are having natural resources or precious resources like metals, gold, jewelries, or gold metals, or silver metals, or diamonds, everyone can see to occupy that poor nation, because there is no proper military force with that poor country. So every nation has to create a powerful military force to protect themselves. So the military strength of a given nation state can be measured in terms of funds expended for defense and security purpose. If we observe in our national income, less percentage of funds are utilizing for the maintenance of military forces. Around, I think, 3 to 6% is there to allocating in the name of our military forces. So every nation has to increase the funds utilization for the purpose of their protection in the name of military, in the name of their protection forces. So the ultimate success of nations, however, would depend on intangible factors such as preparedness, training, leadership, and other etc. things are there which affect the performance of a armed forces in a given situations. If we give freedom to them, they will act easily with the situations. So if we observe, the discussion of tangible elements of power brings out clearly that such elements are necessary to generate capability of nation states in a sovereign state system, because every sovereign state has its own military system and its own armored technology, because no one is sharing. Later we will discuss about the in the concept of disarmament and arms control. We will discuss about the nuclear sharing, nuclear control, nuclear power utilization, and sharing information between the states and control by the United Nations organizations. We are going to discuss about in the topic of arms control. So here many elements, if we need to specify the intangible elements of power that contribute to the most critical way to the overall capability of the sovereign state. If we observe, there is every nation state wants to get most powerful in the world. So power has been the epicenter of human relations from a very inception of humanity. Power plays overall power plays an important role in international relations, and it's a essential element for the international politics. If we observe in international sphere, the status of a state not by its civilization or culture, by its only physical force, because even India is having I think in man force, in military armored forces, we are having largest military force in the world. No one is not having like this much of armored forces in their countries. So this physical force will show the state is capable to get the power or incapable to get the power in the international politics. So the term power that in a person or thing which enables them act or other powers or things can depend the concept of power. So in this concept, we are going to discuss about the concept of balance of power. So a state of stability means every nation or one or two more states contending powers are referred as the balance of power. Between the two nations, the concept of a balance of power is depending upon between the two or more states, because every nation wants to become a superpower. In that time, in international relations, the maintenance of equilibrium among the states or alliances to prevent or to check and attaining absolute power by other state or group of states is termed as the balance of power, because there are many alliances are there. We have discussed in the time of World War I and World War II, there are military alliances are there. Some sorts of nations has become triple alliance, triple entente, like 3 or more countries has become an alliance to get the power in the international political era. So the primary object of this balance of power is behind the balance of power remains to limit a state or a group of states from imposing their authorized or illicit will upon other countries in the region as well as global state system. So the international organizations are there for the maintenance of this balance of power. In this manner, an international or regional order is maintained whereby different geostrategic moves from any state are significantly checked or balanced by others, because every nation should stand on the principles of United Nations international law. So every nation here if we observe about Hans J. Morgenthau has defined the concept as whenever the term is used without qualification, it refers to an actual state of affairs in which power is distributed among several nations with approximate equality. So here, no one can control this concept. No one can control the power. No one can control the distribution of power among the nations. In the name of cooperation, there are several regional organizations are there, such as Asian, European Union, SAARC, like that. Many regional organizations are established for the purpose of mutual cooperation between the states. So the power, the actual concept of power here, any state cannot share their power with the other nations. But here, in the name of cooperation, they are sharing technical information with their friendly states. So one of the Supreme American historian says, Sidney B. Fay, has defined this concept as balance of power is such a just equilibrium in power among the members of the family of nations as will prevent any one of them from becoming significantly strong to enforce its will upon others. So here we are already discussed. No one can force other states. No one cannot impose their ideology into the other states. Like even we have been observed in the time of 18th and 19th century, there are nations are there like America or Germany or Italy. They are maintained their imperialistic ideology and they are forcing other states to get involved in their ideology. So here, balance of power, undoubtedly the balance of power has given a round of applause for maintaining the peace and security through restricting aggressiveness of the aggressor. So here, the United Nations organizations also its stand is to control the aggressor on the poor countries. So in the name of acquiring the power, in the name of acquiring the position of superpower, every superpower or every developed nation wants to occupy the undeveloped poor countries. So here the balance of power has remained thing is under the United Nations organizations. It is important thing to control the successor states. So some kinds of methods are there in the name of maintaining balance of power. There are alliances are there and counter alliances are there. Alliances means already we have discussed in the time of World War I. There are triple alliances are there, triple intent are there. There are military alliances are there. Some regional organizations. In nowadays there are several regional organizations are there. To, in the name of economic, social, political cooperation, there has been made by the group of nations. So thus alliances are there for to maintain this concept of balance of power. There are armament and disarmament. We have already discussed. UNO is established for the maintenance of international peace and security. In the name of that, in the protection of international peace, power is a center point for the maintenance of international peace. So everyone wants to become superpower in the name of that region. In the context of that region, every nation trying to get more weapons for the protection of their country. But here United Nations organizations is there for the control to use of these weapons. To he is directed to mandate every member of its organizations to reduce the weapons, reduce the military forces, to never share the nuclear technology with others. So in that method, the disarmament can resolve a balance of power. One can succeed in keeping its rival disarmed, one preserved the balance in one's favor. So, but in practice, disarmament as such has rarely been resorted to except in case of defeated powers on the conclusion of general war. For example, the effort on the part of the Allied powers after the First World War, we have already discussed, was to keep Germany permanently weak. There are many alliances are there to protect and to control the other emerging nation in the world. So there are territory, acquisition of territory is one of the method or maintaining the balance of power. So already we have discussed every developed nation want to extend their territorial area in the name of acquisition of power. So in the name of acquisition of power, they are trying to use acquisition of territory. So they are extending, they are crossing their boundaries. Like even if we take an example of Pakistan wants to occupy our Kashmir area. So like that, many countries are crossed their boundaries, like territorial boundaries, they are crossed their water borders, they are crossed and occupied other nations' borders. So this is the thing to know about this control of balance of power. This is made possible either by occupying neighboring territories by many states. Like if we observe, there are several incidents are there in present time, like Israel, Iraq. There are several neighboring territories are trying to occupy their neighboring states. So even Pakistan also still trying to occupy our territorial area. So here the security of every nation is depending upon their military forces. So even in this concept, a compensation and partition is important factor to maintain the balance of power. If you observe, every nation in the acquisition of a new territory, they are maintaining, they are imposing their ideology into the occupied nations. So in some situations, there are partitions are there after the both world wars. There are unification of states are there. There are partition of states are there in the name of development, in the name of success of war, in the name of failure of war. They are merged into the one nation. They are divided into the several parts after the war situations. So here some sorts of creation of buffer states are there. Buffer states means a technique to maintain the buffer state is also a technique to maintain the balance of power. Buffer state is a natural zone, means sandwiched between two powerful nations. It is usually it's a weak state, but its function to keep two giants apart and thus reduce the chances to friction between them. Because even for example, we are maintaining neutrality among these two superpowers. Like that, many underdeveloped countries, many poor nations, many lost countries in the world war are they are being neutral with their dominant nations. So this will be the one of the major method to maintain the balance of power. There are several objectives are there in this concept in the name of maintenance of balance of power. There are balance of powers aims such as distribution of power among the state, so that no single state or no group of states become so powerful as to enforce its will upon the others. So preservation of independent of states means after the establishment of modern state system, there are several groups are created. There are several states has been emerged as independent sovereign states in the name of peacemaking. Like many international organizations has been established to maintain the international peace and security among all the states in the world. So balance of power is depending upon the maintenance and preservation of international peace system. So if we observe, preservation of peace means between peace and security, security will get priority over peace, because every nation wants to be protected by themselves, or in the name of their friendly nations support, they should be protected by their forces, because security is the first condition of peace. If there is no security, if there is no proper military forces, everyone get rid of that poor nation. So many advocates of this balance of power believe that the balance of power causes peace as long as the balance is maintained. Peace is assured. If balance is maintained, neither there will be aggressions nor was, and therefore peace would be automatically be established. So if there is protection, there will be establishment of peace will be there. And also maintenance of international law is important factor for the balance of power. So it is essential. Maintenance of international law is essential for every state, because everyone stands upon the UN Charter. United Nations made a charter between the rules and regulations, what to follow, what should not follow among the member states. There are 193 members are there, 9 United Nations organization. Everyone should stand for the that UN Charter. In the charter, they have mentioned about international law to maintain the international peace and security. Regarding the relation between international law and balance of power, Oppenheim writes that balance of power is an indispensable condition of the very existence of international law. A law of nations can exist only if there can be an equilibrium. Means a balance of power between members of this United Nations or family of nations. Everyone should stand for the maintenance of and follow up of this international law. If you observe, is there any relevance about this balance of power today? Means although the concept of balance of power has lost much its validity in the present day conditions, its operational is still meaningful. As long as multi-nation state system exists, balance of power will remain as relevant concept. So if balance of power survives even today, it is because of the fact that an effective substitute has not yet been possible. Such as substitute can probably be found out in the effective world organization. So world public opinion and worldwide acceptance of these obligations of the international law, but this prospect is very remote, because however many thinkers has been expressed their views on this concept. They have told that every nation their balance of power will continue to operate even if supranational or world organization is formed. Means after establishment of such as international organizations in the process of peacemaking, every nation should stand for the international law. How that idea of balance of power is still the central theoretical concept in international relations, but in present days, we cannot set our eyes to realities, because the rise of non-aligned states, non-aligned countries on a larger scale means 2/3 members of United Nations are following the non-aligned formula, as the states large scale has adversely affected by the importance of the principle of balance of power in the late 20th century. Means after the Cold War, after the after the 1970s and 80s, the non-aligned countries have become the larger group in the United Nations General Assembly, because General Assembly has its 193 members. So around that 193 members, there are around 130 members are supporting this concept. So in the concept of balance of power, all these nations are should stand for the maintenance of international peace and security. If we observe at the global level, balance of power has lost much of its reference, but it continues to hold good at regional level relations among nations, because there are several regional organizations has emerged, established by their mutual cooperation in the name of economical cooperation. There are economic organizations are established in the name of mutual cooperation in all variants like social, political, economic conditions. There are several group of alliances are there, several group of nations are there, several regional organizations are emerged, but they have to follow this principle of balance of power. So in this way, it continues to be an important controlling mechanism in international politics. So if there is no UNO, there is no proper protection of this concept. So if we observe the role of maintenance of international peace and security, the United Nations organizations is stated aims are facilitating cooperation of international law, international security, international economic development, social progress, human rights, and achievement of world peace. These are the mottos of United Nations organizations. It has been established in 1945 after the World War II to replace the League of Nations, to stop war between countries, to provide a platform for its dialogue, like to maintenance of international peace and security. So if you observe, there are 193 members are there now in the General Assembly of United Nations. So everyone stands for the this principle, this mottos like mutual cooperation between the maintenance of international law. So one of the primary purpose of the international United Nations organizations is maintenance of international peace and security. It is established for the maintenance of international peace and security among all the nations. Since its creation, the United Nations has often been called upon prevent disputes from escalating into war, because its role is very important in the control of war between member states. So there is many situations has been raised by the member states, but it is its involvement is there to control them, to protection of international peace, to maintain the international security. It is mediating the member states. It is maintaining arbitration between the disputes where arised disputes between the states. So there is many internal organs are there to maintain the international peace and security. If we observe in the history of establishment of United Nations organizations, and after the establishment of United Organization till date, the role of international organizations like this United Nations organization is many peacemaking operations have been successfully made by the United Nations organization. There are around 60 major peacekeeping operations are there, and still there are several like 16 to 20 operations are ongoing to maintain the international peace and security. So its major motto is to maintain the international peace and security and stop the war. So it has an agenda for the peace, the security. The Secretary General, while emphasizing the respect for the fundamental sovereignty and integrity of states, constituted the foundation stone of the organization in the form of maintenance of the concept. So there are several organs are there, several associated groups are there in the maintenance of United Nations organization. So majorly United Nations organization has been resolved many things in the form of peacemaking. There are they maintained diplomatic relations with all the nations. So there is an important role in the name of prevention of war between the disputed states. So in the process of peacemaking, the United Nations can be proud of the speed with which peacekeeping has evolved in response to the new political environment resulting from the end of the Cold War. But the last few years have confirmed that respect for certain basic principles of peacemaking are essential to its success. So if any country, if we take an example, every nation has to be followed by its own agenda, because UN has its agenda of peace. It has an important motto to maintain the international peace and security. Everyone should stand for the treaties or rules made by the United Nations organizations. It conducted many things between the member states, like disarmament and arms control treaties are there to maintain the international peace and security. Many summits have been made by the United Nations organizations to control the arms race in the world. So every nation wants to become superpower in that region. Everyone wants to collect more weapons. Even in nowadays, there are many countries are there. They are having excess amount of weapons, excess amount of forces, excess amount of nuclear power is there. If we observe, there are many countries are having nuclear power. So in that region, this United Nations organization has been conducting many meetings to reduce or to ratify the arms system. So the Security Council of United Nations organizations is there for disarmament and arms control, and they made many non-proliferation treaties with the special reference to weapons of mass destruction. So if there are excess of weapons, they should be dismantled by the member states. So they committed themselves to taking concrete steps to enhance the effectiveness of United Nations in those areas. So there are many specialized agencies are there under the United Nations organizations to contribute the peace. So there are like many organizations like UNICEF and United Nations Children Fund. They are there for helps to protect the rights of children, and also United Nations has made a declaration on human rights in 1948, December 10th. They have made a declaration on international human rights. That's why we are celebrating December 10th as International Human Rights Day. There are separate organizations are there, but if we observe, we can observe in this hello, sorry for the interruption between the session. I think we are having 6 more classes from tomorrow onwards for the completion of our elective course, Contemporary Political Relations. So stay connected with us. And for the schedule, you may visit our website, university website. It will displayed soon. Is there any doubts? Hello, am I audible now? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Sir, any
Okay.
changes to exam paper?
No, there is no changes in the examination question paper pattern, but we have classes. I am telling about we have 6 more classes to complete our syllabus. We have another paper is there, na contemporary political relations. In that
Sir, today which unit we are discussing, sir?
last chapter.
Okay, sir. In this international relations, sir, or contemporary relations, sir?
International relations only. Last chapter there is about balance
Tomorrow
of
onwards, next paper, sir.
Next paper. Yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So you have said that you will give important question at the end of the classes.
Yes, but we have delayed in the morning session. So I will drop my number. I will share important questions. Not possible in this class.
You give your phone number. You said yesterday and you went away.
No, not in my hand. The host concluded yesterday's session. So I am dropping my number in the chat.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So shall I continue? A concept has remained. Actually, there is a technical delay in the starting time. We have started late in the session. Should I continue?
Yes, sir.
Because one of the important concept is there, that is disarmament and arms control. So here there is no alternatives to peace, but war in our time has been an anachronism, because the war is essential for the acquisition of the superpower position, but UN is there for control the emergence of superpowers. So in the past, we have been observed the superpowers are aggressively focusing on the developing nations, like third world nations. So in the name of support, they are means mentally forcing to participate in the war. In the name of support, they have influencing their supporter nations. But here, war needs no documentation to prove its horrors. But if war is started, the UN agenda will cross that limits. So if we observe about disarmament, literally disarmament means the reduction or elimination of armaments, means weapons. The term disarmament is used very general sense, but here the need of disarmament is essential for the peacemaking in the international political system. So the disarmament is the concept which maintained and which established for the purpose of peacemaking. The United Nations organizations is there for the maintenance of this concept. So there are several meetings has been made. There are several treaties and meetings have held by the United Nations organizations to control the emerging superpowers. There are several superpowers are there. They are like China, even our India also now emerging as a superpower. So the United Nations wants to control entire the world to reduce the excess weapons and excess technology. So they have aimed at all the nations to maintain the international peace and security. So if you observe, the total disarmament concept aims to complete elimination of weapons. So there will be no weapon of any kind whatsoever, but they can maintain for the protection of themselves, but they should not use nuclear power. They should not use nuclear power for the first use. So means here, first use of nuclear power is prohibited by the United Nations organizations. If there is a need for the use of nuclear power, they should inform to the United Nations organizations. But here, the United Nations organizations should not allow any nation to use of the nuclear power. So in the name of international peacemaking, there are several meetings, there are important treaties has been created by the established by the United Nations organizations. Many efforts are made by the United Nations organizations in the process of peacemaking. So there are treaties like the partial test ban treaty, which is made in 1963. In this treaty, they banned nuclear testing in the atmosphere or underwater or in space. But here they have not mentioned underground test. So every nation in this time after the 1963 PTBT treaty, every nation tested their nuclear power underground. Like India also, we have tested in 1974, we have tested in Thar Desert in located in Rajasthan. So we have one more time in 1998 also we have tested in Pokhran area, we have been tested underground with this nuclear technology. So in 1974 we have been become an member of this nuclear power group, but UN never supports these kinds of activities in future. So later that now United Nations never accepting these test trials in the name of acquisition of nuclear power. United Nations controlling the member states to stop sharing the information about this technology. So in 1968, there is a treaty about Non-Proliferation Treaty. This is treaty is about to come to force in 1970. There are large number of participation is there in this treaty, including the 5 permanent members in the United Nations organizations. So in this meeting, the main concept of this treaty is there are 3 important pillars for this treaty. Means non-proliferation means stopping the spread of nuclear weapons or related technology. So United Nations clearly says that no nation, no nuclear nation to share that information with non-nuclear states. So there is no information sharing between nuclear and non-nuclear states, and also disarmament should be strictly implemented by all the member states who have signed in this treaty. And right to peacefully use nuclear energy in the form of energy, they can use nuclear technology to use the power of nuclear energy, including access to nuclear technology, which is the right to all the state parties to this treaty. Since 1970, the NPT has largely been successful, although not perfect, at containing the spread of nuclear weapons globally. Efforts at nuclear disarmament by the 5 nuclear weapon states have been uneven and incompleted. So there are, if we observe, there are biological weapons also they are using. So the convention also made by the United Nations organizations to control to use of biological or bacteriological or chemical weapons after the 1972 signing this biological weapons convention is prohibition of the development of production and the toxin weapons on their destructions. So this treaty, including the prohibition of elimination of all types of weapons of mass destruction, should be started from this time. So there is many treaties like anti-ballistic missile, strategic arms limitation talks. There are two treaties are there between 1969 and 1972. At that time, they have made two agreements about this thing to control the weapons, to reduce the weapons. So they have regulated to how much weapons have to a state. So there is limitations to have weapons for the protection of their states. So there are several treaties like START and strategic armed reduction treaties are there to control the weapons by the larger states and smaller states. There is an important treaty there that is called CTBT. The Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty is designed to prevent testing of nuclear weapons and hence reduce the chance of an arms race. So in that CTBT, which is made by the United Nations organizations in 1996. So here there is a hidden agenda is there by the superpowers like United Nations permanent members. They are having nuclear technology. So they are forced to United Nations to no new nuclear state should create its nuclear power. So these who are having technology, they should not share information or they should not export the nuclear weapons to non-nuclear weapons. So that's why our India and Pakistan and Korea also not signed this treaty. So after the Cold War, there are many issues has been discussed by the non-aligned states to protect themselves by the dominance of the superpowers. So even India's nuclear policy is different from others' nuclear policy. So like India gained freedom from the nuclear age, and it was a time when the entire world witnessed for the atom bomb usage in Japan by the United States of America, dropped two atoms in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So the nuclear arms race started from the Second World War only. After that only, many nations wanted to occupy that nuclear technology, wanted to get that nuclear weapons from the nuclear states. So here our nuclear policy is different from their ideology. After independence, India, we have developed, we have been emerged as a sovereign state. We have a separate stand on the peacemaking process by the United Nations organizations. We have maintained record of non-proliferation. Since independence, India has been committed to the goal of general and complete disarmament in spirit and letter. The first Prime Minister of our India, the Jawaharlal Nehru, made it abundantly clear immediately after the independence, India had no plan to develop nuclear weapons, but in the process of protection of our country, we have been borrowed the technology and we have been made the usage of international relations. The nuclear weapons has been made in India, and also we are joined in the group of nuclear states. So we stood on the principle of international law, but the personal protections means our state's protection. If we do not have that nuclear power, our neighboring states can attack on us. So in that reason, for the self-protections, we have borrowed the technology and we have made nuclear weapons as soon as possible. In 1974, we have a test drive in first time, and we have been tested in 1998 for the second time. The same place we have, now we are having powerful nuclear weapons in the world. So if we observe the role of India's foreign policy and India's nuclear policy is always stand for the principles of agenda of United Nations organizations. If you observe, we stood for the rules of the international organizations like United Nations. We stood for the peacemaking process. We are helping United Nations, and we are getting support from the United Nations in the process of peacemaking in international politics. So in international relations, there are many treaties has been made by the United Nations in the name of disarmament and arms control. So, but here the superpowers and the permanent members in the Security Council, there are 5 members are there. They are having a hidden agenda to get the position of superpower in the world. So here the concept of this arms control is important factor in the maintenance of international peace and security by the United Nations organizations, because there is no alternatives for the arms control. So every nation is need of the weapons, but there is no need for the excess weapons, or there is no need for the excess production of nuclear weapons for the purpose of their protection. So this is the concept of our disarmament and the arms control. If there is no activity of the United Nations organization, so every nation is there for the production of nuclear weapons. So if there is no UNO, the world is not there in the existence. So UNO is there, UNO established for the maintenance of the international peace and security. So even in some times it is not actively participating and not active playing its original powers. There is a reason is there behind in its activity. There is a dominance of the that by permanent members. So that's why UNO is not actively exercising its powers and duties among the member states. So if there is no dominance over its functions, the UNO is strictly follow its own agenda and strictly implement its in United Nations Charter in the process of international peace and international security. So this is the our concept. Is there any doubts?
Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, disarmament meaning, tell me, sir.
Disarmament
Yes,
means
sir.
we should not carry the weapons.
Okay.
We have to reduce the weapons. We should not have excess weapons. That's it.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Oh.